Welcome to the Pick Up the Flow show. I'm the host, Salwa, and today my guest is Asif Mian. Hi, Asif.
Hi, Salwa. How are you?
Good, and you?
I'm very good.
So, the tradition of this podcast is to let the guests introduce themselves. Can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Asif Mian, and I'm an artist working in sculpture, video, installation, and was born in Jersey City, New Jersey. My parents are from Pakistan, and grew up in Astoria and high school in New Jersey, and now I'm living in Brooklyn for a while, and yeah, making my work out here.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you said so when did you move to Queens?
I mean, my mom was working at the Kodak factory in Jersey City.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was born there, but I think very shortly after that, in Jersey City, I was born. And then very soon after that was in Astoria, Queens. And up until basically like middle school. And then I was in high school in like the suburbs in New Jersey. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So do you still have friends from back in the days, or?
Not really, no.
Okay.
I don't even have friends from like undergrad. I kind of, yeah. So,
Yeah.
not really, but my father had a pharmacy, and that I used to work at the pharmacy, and it's still there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like kind of memories like that are
Wow.
my friends.
Yeah, that's in your website. Like you have this in your portfolio slash website. You have like a slide of traumatic events,
Yeah.
and you mentioned. Sorry, I'm laughing, but I'm not laughing at. I'm just embarrassed. I don't know. But you mentioned
It's kind
that
of funny, yeah.
at 4 you were held hostage in your parents' pharmacy in Queens.
Yeah, I think yeah. So I think I wrote that, and there's a lot of I've studied in like behavioral science and psychology, and I remember my mom saying, yeah, when you were 4, this guy came in, and this is like in the 80s in New
Wow.
York, in Queens, and she was like, this guy put a gun to your head and
Wow.
wanted I forget what it Oxycontin or something, and they were like, we don't have any, in this pharmacy, and I totally forgot, like I didn't have any memory of that, and she was like, yeah, she's like, you were in shock for like a couple days.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, so that biography, or that, it's called Select Events.
Mm.
It's a way to kind of I'm not saying certain events in your life shape
Mm.
certain things you do or how you are, and that's very natural to like how you have even a case study of a person, their psychological case study. So I think it came out of that, like, what if I focus on these certain kind of traumatic or violent events, and
Mm-hmm.
and some of them can be very small, but how that to focus on that as like a biography in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and how that builds a case study or a
Mm-hmm.
profile around a person,
Mm-hmm.
And with me, it's through my work, my
Mm-hmm.
artwork. So
Yeah, that's so interesting because you just talked about violence as like kind of like a man, like a not concept, but something that like is behind your work. Like you're trying, like, is that something that is still present in your work? Like you're trying to not illustrate, but like make works about violence.
yeah, it's I think those are like mysteries, and I think they have obviously histories
Mm-hmm.
um, in different ways. Like some of my earliest, obviously this thing that happened at 4, which
Well.
was maybe something I blocked out. But later, like being bullied, or getting in fights, or things like that can be quite normal,
Mm-hmm.
but are part of certain types of like maybe hyper masculine culture or masculine culture that need to be examined.
Mm-hmm.
And so I even focus on like my early performance work, were really just about intimidation or like dealing with being bullied, you know, and how not to like look at it from the outside. A lot of my work, I kind of dive into really literally the fibers of it, you know, and but with this, it was in the behavior or like the culture or the actions of intimidation, and that being part of like kind of like an element of like this sort of masculine culture. I wrestled in high school. I was a wrestler, and so I was around this like really kind of intense jock culture, but I never, even though I was like captain of the wrestling team and I was like really using it for different purposes, like the activity of wrestling, I was well in this sort of like culture, this jock culture, kind of like as an outsider, insider. And I think that a lot about my existence of being an outsider, insider. But later, when I made these performance works, it was about being inside that, you know, that sort of like activity or this like behavior and kind of undoing it or like changing the rules of it, you know? And so it would be like, okay, we intimidate in this performance, we would intimidate each other, but it would never get to this point of fighting or anything like that. It was more staying within this sort of, I was interested in like fight or flight, or like the fight or flight reaction where you you kind of have a biological change linked to like adrenaline and different things. So so instead of us getting to this point of fighting or anything like that, we stay within this like looping of intimidation, or but it kind of turns into comedy, or then it even turned into something more erotic, you know, because really at the end it was just like this breakdown of personal space. Something that in wrestling there is no personal space, so it was very familiar for me, you know, to do this type of performance, you know.
Nice. So you mentioned like being insider and outsider. Like, does your identity kind of affect this feeling that you had?
Yeah. Yes. My parents, you know, are immigrants from Pakistan, Muslim immigrants. So growing up in different parts of Astoria and then Jersey, but it was much more in contrast in Jersey, like in the suburbs, where my parents' practices or what they believed in or what they their customs and all that was very different from American suburban culture, you know? So yeah, there was always this feeling of failing at assimilation or trying to assimilate, but it, you know, of being on the inside or but always an outsider of and then you know, and then my parents kind of were like loners too, like there wasn't like a big community they were part of. So so it was always this kind of but then something like sports, I could, you know, or art, or, you know, being able to do things, you know, physically or with making work, kind of brought you on the inside or like brought you to like a leveling field. But yeah, I think that really that sort of sense or that sort of position of being in the middle or in this gray area, I think really works for me, or like makes me it just automatically allows me to like look at things from an outside sort of perspective, or like kind of like a bit dissolved from from the real thing, you know.
But so when you were growing up, like, did you have like what were your dreams? Like, what were you thinking about? Because you were in the wrestling team, right? Like in your teenage years. So what drove you back? Like, when was that? In 2000?
Oh no, these
No,
were in the
okay.
90s when I was in high
90s.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the 90s I was.
So it was before
Mid 90s. Yeah.
the Wall Street 9/11, and
Right.
did you see like a difference of treatments, like how people treated you and your family, and but also like what drove you, like what was your like dream
Yeah.
back in that time?
Yeah. So I was in high school. Yeah, I was in high school, and kind of also with my work, I really look at this time. Not just me, but like a lot of people from 16 to like 19 or 20, and especially for like you're developing your identity or your adult identity. You're responding to different factors or influences. In the mid 90s, 96, I believe, was like the first World Trade sort of bombing. And that's when I first could feel like this big difference, racially, because obviously it was there before, but you people didn't really know where you were from, definitely in Astoria or like Queens, yes, but this is when I was in high school. People didn't really, obviously they thought maybe I was Indian or something, but it's, but being Muslim Pakistani, like, you kind of like no one was so interested. And then after 9/11, yeah, I was in my early 20s and in New York, and I mean, obviously that was like such a kind of double-edged or double-sided event, because I'm here, I'm from New York, and this huge, this really cataclysmic event happened, but then also who they're talking about, what cultures they're talking about, what people they're talking about, that really became into full focus, as far as American culture. Because like I said before that, like, you're kind of like under the radar, So that was really affecting, like, and even in New York, the response, kind of the fears I had or the racism and different things really came out post 9/11. And then a lot of my, I think I got more interested in how I would deal with that, or some of these violences, or like violence in my life, how I would deal with that. And I think it was really through my work, and that was when I started to kind of slowly understand how to work with all these things, these events.
And one of the events that shaped your life is when your dad passed. So yeah, when he died, like, you were 20.
Yes.
So were you still in high school, or you were?
I was a couple years into college.
Into college, okay.
Yeah, undergrad.
So
yeah.
you were studying biology. You were like in a really total different path. So
yeah.
How did you feel back in that time? Like, what was your mindset?
Yeah, so I was always doing art. I didn't go to art school. It wasn't I was also interested in science, So I was in undergrad studying genetics and studio art, like basically I was printmaking and doing sculpture. When I was 20, I was in a very kind of normal college environment, and my father was murdered in Texas. So, and he was kind of in and out of the house. I was mostly raised by my mom and my sister. So he was not so much around through my teenage years. And then you hear about this event, what happened, and like, we thought he was in Florida, but he was in Texas, and so he was kind of living his own life in different places. But I think I'd spoken to him like a year earlier, and then this happened in the middle of, I don't know, Thanksgiving break or something,
Wow.
you know? So, yeah, I think it really, really, I remember having a kind of a visceral response where when I went back to university, I was going up these stairs to the lunchroom and I could hear people laughing, just like laughing over a joke.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had this thought like, they do not understand like what happened and what I'm going through. So it was kind of this, I think I really kind of detached or like even separated more from the kind of university lifestyle, and just knew from that moment, like I had to, I enjoyed science, but really had to go full into my artwork. And then it had to be dealing with some of these events, like this killing, but also other things, like I was saying, like bullying or intimidate, all these kind of things that maybe you hate, but then you want to, again, there's a mystery to it, you know? So it kind of really, I kind of understood quickly that was the type of thing, those were the type of things that I felt contemporary art or art making reserved space for, you know? That it was, that's where the important things, I mean, I was like 20, that in my mind, I was like, that's where the important things you want to talk about have to be, you know? And my form was developing to be, you know, drawing and sculpture and then video later.
So I'm gonna play this video. It's from your show at the Queen's Museum.
Cool.
And
yes.
Yeah, so can you give us a little bit of context?
Sure. This is the Queen's Museum Jerome Foundation Fellowship. I was awarded, so I made this solo show of sculpture and video and rug works. And all these elements here are actually evidence, eyewitness reports from this killing of, you know, that with my father. And so these are all eyewitness reports that we did sort of printmaking processes onto fabric.
Wow.
And so each one was one eyewitness. And then here you'll continually see like red and black plaid. And that's what the suspect was wearing. And then he had shoulder length hair, so that drawing was like making a portrait out of just hair, you know? These were some of my earlier performance works. So that one's, so again, you can see a quick snippet of like this sort of fight or, you know, caress. Again, red and black plaid, but this is where I started bringing in the idea of the jinn, the jinn possessing or, you know, influencing a person or an animal. And here, the jinn is called Smokeless Fire. So I used like silk screen t-shirts with fire pattern and like red and black plaid. So it's all from like stuff you find at, you know, a store, very like basic clothing things, but I'm made into sculpture. And then here, it's also part of these rug works, kind of about location or geography. And here it's where I embedded a lot of tiles, like tiles from one floor are embedded into like wall-to-wall carpeting. Here again, these are using red and black plaid and elements of thread and things from evidence material. My hair, my fingerprints, but all in that design of like a forensic ruler. You know, all the red and black, all the black and white elements were forensic rulers. Here are these drawings I made, all out of red and black plaid that's separated, you know, pulled apart. So it's like pulled apart with like dentist tools. Yeah. And then there's all these rugs. These are tribal rugs spliced with wall-to-wall carpeting. And as I pulled them apart and re-collage them and combine them, I made all these characters out of the elements that are different evidence from the event. So like there's a truck at the bottom and he got away, he escaped in a truck. The two-headed character was Raph, like a shapeshifter, you know.
So how did you, like, why Raf? Like, what's the origin?
So RAF, Raph, they described him as dark complexion. So, and my mom was like, oh, he could have been South American or South Asian. So Raf is short for Rafiq or Raphael.
Ah, okay.
So I took two names that were South Asian or South American, and Raf was kind of could be either one, you know? I think when I got into this, started working with the evidence, and it was never about like, I know who Raf is gonna be. It actually was the opposite. I'm never gonna know who Raf is gonna be. But he wore red and black plaid. He got away in a chrome truck, you know, truck with really wide rims. It's called a dually, dually rims. So I made sculptures out of junkyard parts like this, chromed. And then I put them on mirrors because it's all kind of a mirage. It was on a hot road in Texas. So it kind of creates that mirage off the heat of the road. So this installation is all recreating the truck out of truck parts that are chromed and mirrors. And then also I spliced weightlifting equipment. So it kind of has, so you could see that almost, that's like a weightlifting bar and rims. So when the next shot, I think you'll see from far away. So these are weight rims and rims, weight plates and rims cut together. So from far away, it looks like a truck, but you know, it actually is based off a weightlifting bench.
And the fabric inside.
Yeah, and the fabric, the fire is
cool.
in there, the gin is in there, you know? So, and then this is, so you can see this is weightlifting parts and truck parts and rims. And this is the image of a truck, but it actually is a weightlifting equipment. And it's also not a full truck, it's with a mirror. So it's all these elements of mirage and like the unknowing, the mystery. Maybe Raph is into trucks and weightlifting, you know, and this is sort of his house, you know. So these were all junk parts in a junkyard, you know, that we got, these car parts.
But so, like, what did you got out of this body of work? Like, did you got an epiphany, or like, did you come up to a conclusion? Did it help you process certain things in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think before that, I almost every day would envision, based off the evidence and different things, like the event, you know, being visual person, like I would, in my mind, almost obsessively, oh, this happened. I would do drawings off where it happened. And then I went to Dallas, outside of Dallas, Terrell, Texas, went to the sheriff's office. I got the eyewitness reports. I went to the location where it happened. You know, this was only a few years ago. Got truck parts that matched the truck, you know, the activity, the performance of tracking down this material that is very tied to this obviously very traumatic event, or like this, but something that happens every day and is talked about every day in the US, you know, even the idea of evidence. But that sort of activity of doing it, of going out, embodying this sort of search on my own, and then making work out of it, cutting the parts, pulling plaid apart, thread by thread, you know, to make like a drawing that, or like a collage that unravels. I didn't completely realize, but at the end of it was definitely part of exposure therapy, this sort of psychoanalytic, psychological technique of like how to deal with trauma. You know, you expose yourself to the events or elements of it, you know. So me making work out of it, the actual, or, you know, not the actual, but like everything's a mirror or an echo of the actual material. But cutting it, making work out of it, figuring out how to, like, I would never have made work out of red and black plaid, but now this was something that was brought to me, you know?
Yeah.
There's no interest for me
Yeah.
before.
It's like it's set up like new limitations that were actually good for you, because then you experimented with new materials and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So as an artist, I working with it, not a documentary filmmaker or a fictional filmmaker, as a artist, experimentation was the essence of it, you know, like learning how, figuring out a way how to get in, which meant literally like pulling the fibers apart, you know? But back to your other question, like in the end, I never obsessed over envisioning the event anymore, you know?
Oh.
Yeah, I like that kind of ended. That sort of obsession of like wondering what it was.
Yeah.
And now, so in a way, I really think it's tied to art. It is tied to therapy and art therapy, and how to deal with trauma is by maybe this form of exposure therapy, or making art out of like the remnants.
It's so true. Like, do you feel like also with your Pakistani heritage, like, have you been, after the death of your father, have you been more interested in knowing more about the culture, or like trying to find like people from your family, or, you know, have you been, because I know many friends who grew up, who are American, they grew up in the US, but their parents are from other countries. They always have this identity crisis, and they want to know, they are seeking that part of their selves, you know?
Yeah. I say with, let's say that show, or was, there was a lot of like filling in the gaps. Like, you know, as an art, you know, as artists, we don't have to perform like a detective or a forensic scientist. You know, it's not, I studied science, so it was like very much tied to science, you know, the facts. But I could play with, or I could use exploratory, or like some more exploratory methods, or speculative methods. And I started like really connecting to things I grew up with that were from like Arabic or Pakistani or Islamic sort of folklore, myth. Even thinking about like visiting the Alhambra when I was younger. I went a few times and seeing the mosaics, and you know, really, and then really kind of connecting to that sort of, to elements even in my house that you know, were knickknacks and things from little you know, little remnants from Pakistan that my parents brought. But one major thing was growing up with like this folklore, this myth of the jinn, you know, of this like shapeshifter, or this like invisible being that possesses someone. And, you know, my mom would say, oh, or someone would say like, he did that because he was, because the jinn made him do it, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, you know, and I even was thinking, connecting it to science, and it's like, okay, adrenaline, or like fight or flight, or like being angry, or being you know, some of these maybe is a form of possession, you know, of the jinn. Like you could be possessed by biochemicals that makes you do things, or like they talk about in cold blood, or like, you know, murder, or like things like that. So I was really fascinated how we even explain the unexplainable behavior that people do, and how that could be, you know, way deep in our traditions and our cultures, how we explain why someone does something, and how the jinn came out of that, how every culture has made their own shapeshifter, or their own spirit, ghoul, ghost, you know, Greek cultures to South American cultures, African cultures, they all have this form of a like shapeshifter, a non-human, being that can influence people's behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's like something my parents use or adults use when you're a kid, like the jinn,
Yeah.
don't let the jinn get you and things like that. But
Yeah.
I think there's something really, really kind of primitive and connected to our cultures that is like really important,
Yeah.
how we explain even why people do violent things, why people do anything,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But yeah, to go back to your like career path, it's so fascinating because like you study biology and you were always doing art. Like it's not something you started doing like recently, like it was always part of your life. But for me, it's so interesting to know more about like, that shift because you were a videographer, you were working with video, and then suddenly you switched and you were like, okay, I'm gonna go to Columbia and do this master degree.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it's not so clear, but I was, like many people, I was in New York in my 20s, and I was in some shows and had a job, but I was in art direction,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in animation and taught myself design, and I was showing my own work,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't so I don't know if I was so confident about my own work. So I actually got more interested in directing like music videos, So I got into music videos and short films and things like that and some ads but it was, long story short, it was definitely sucking my soul, like working for other people. So I started to reserve time to in secret, was making sculptures. So I had a studio for about 2 years, 3 years that no one even knew about or like came by. I was just like really practicing how to translate these ideas I had and how to make art out of this raft event. And so I was steadily doing that, and I was less and less working for other people making video. And it's kind of just like my friend was like, you should do your MFA, you should do an MFA. And I was like, I don't know, when I was in my 20s, it wasn't as talked about now, or this kind of vital, everyone's doing it now. So I kind of like, I was like, well, there was a point I remember, I should do my MFA or I should like make music videos. Because I was like working with MIA and the Roots and like all these people.
So cool.
So I kind of was like, no, I'm going to keep making videos.
So that was in the 2000s?
That was like 2009.
Nice.
8, 9.
So you've seen like things shift, like in the art world, like you've seen also in music, like this new kind of shapeshifter. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's always shifting.
Yeah,
right?
Things are shifting. But so then you did your MFA, and how was your experience?
I mean, it was great. My friend signed me up for this open house at Columbia. Like I wasn't gonna go, and he signed me up, and my friend John, and I ended up going to this open house, and where they just talk about the program, and it was really interesting to me. And then I'm in Europe shooting this big commercial that was like consuming my whole life, but I was like applying for grad schools at night, and no one knew I was doing that. My attitude is, and then I got into like some really good schools. So my attitude has always been like, if I'm gonna do something, I have to go full force. So I went fully into video and like did that for a number of years. And I still do video, obviously, but at that time, I was like, I have to go to grad school, basically just fully do my work and dive into it completely, and that meant giving up this whole career.
Wow.
in directing. Yeah, video directing.
So, yeah, I'm really curious about like your experience navigating like grants and all that circuit, and like if you have any tips for like viewers who are trying to apply to grants, you know, yeah, because you as an artist you depend on those grants, right? Like it's something that is necessary, but also it's like it kind of like builds your portfolio, so it has this like we need money, but at the same time we need those grants to like have this, you know, the profile needed for those applications. Yeah, can you tell us more about like your experience with like applying for grants?
Yeah, so I mean, I went to Columbia to do my MFA, and before that I couldn't get anything, you know.
Well,
I tried, you know, grants and residencies. And then at Columbia, I mean, that gave me time to like really kind of conceive the beginnings of the RAF project, but also really go down to the core elements of what my practice is, you know? And so I don't know, with the grants and things, it's really, I think it's really maybe in a simple way, it's about those two things. It's like what your elemental elements of your practice are. Sometimes I'll talk about material and how that relates to the jinn. Like just recently I'm writing about my work, and I'm like, I'm making sculpture as if the shapeshifter or the jinn is in the work, in the material, you know? What does that look like? How does that? So those go into the writing that will eventually be like for a grant. And then you talk about things you want to do or in the future, like for the Jerome Queens Museum, it was taking what I had, work I had, things I was interested in my practice now, and then where I want to see it go to, you know, or how it could fill a solo show or like fill a gallery, you know. So I think it's those, I think certain institutions and especially grants with institutions and museums, I think there's this excitement to see how they can help you, at least with the Queens Museum, which was fantastic kind of experience. It was seeing how, okay, your work and your thinking and your writing already is laying down the groundwork for like what you can do, what you can do on a bigger scale, you know. And then they'll maybe help you with resources and people to scale it up, you know. So I think that word sometimes I think about a lot, scale up. Like maybe you can do something on a smaller level, but the thinking's there, the mechanics are there, the material, the colors, whatever, they're all kind of working together towards this, you could say artist statement, or, you know, what you're interested in. But then it can be it can scale up, or it can become broader or bigger to be like a bigger show, and that you can demonstrate, you know, you can talk about and that's what's worked for me as far as like getting grants and it's not always like making something completely new. It's definitely building off.
But so I'm curious about like your experience navigating those situations while being a multidisciplinary artist, because I feel like if someone just do one medium, like for example, I don't know, like drawing or painting, it's kind of like it's right there. But like when you do video, sculptures, performances, even sound, like how do you tie up everything to make it kind of like, because I feel people kind of underestimate like when people have multiple hats, you know what I mean? So yeah.
It definitely takes time to kind of like learn how to work with different material. But I think I've been thinking about this because it's like definitely the way it has to be part of how you work, you know? So um, I'm not going to do everything in video, and I'm not going to do everything in sculpture. I'm not really interested. I'm interested in how certain materials or even certain video, like I use thermal cameras, you know, how those speak to the shapeshifter, to be honest, you know, or which is Raf, which is Jinn. But like, so I'm using those. For me, it's like not trying to do all these things, but like being selective.
Selective, yeah.
In like, okay, I'm gonna use thermal cameras. I'm interested because the thermal camera can see through plastic, you know, like plastic polypropylene bags and stuff.
Speaking of which, this is a Smokeless Fire. Can you talk about it a little bit?
Yes. This is a film, video about 12 minutes long for Okayama Art Summit in Okayama, Japan, from the fall of 2022. Rirkrit Teravanija was a curator and also a mentor of mine, and he knew I was working with thermal cameras, so he asked me to do a project there. And this is all shot with a drone. A drone with a thermal and a regular camera. And it was really about it. You know, I was working for a few years with a thermal camera and how it reacts to different materials. Like here, it's actually this big black plastic tarp that we made that these performers are moving in. I'm probably giving it away a little bit, but and so we can see through this plastic. And yeah, that's cool, but it all was like more about this idea of creating this smokeless fire, the Jinn, the sort of ghost. So they're all moving as a group, you know, but they're all individuals. They're all like 5, 6 different performers with all vastly different performance styles. One's a couple are theater actors. There's another who does kind of traditional Chinese dance or performance. There's another one that does classical Indian movement or mixed with contemporary. So it's like they move as a group, but they're all individuals, kind of stuck in this high school, back to high school. But we shot in this abandoned high school in Yonkers, New York. So this is in a big auditorium here. So it's almost like they're there are these different performing jinns that are kind of trying to find their way out of this school. I think I was definitely thinking about the kind of series of like school shootings in the US. And that was happening at the time for sure. And how there's all these kind of procedures to kind of react to an active shooter, you know, like hiding under desks, how to escape, how to blockade doors, escape routes and things. So it's not literal to that, but it was this idea of students maybe trapped, you know, trying to get out. So this became more of a performance out of it, or a movement. And then the language became more about heat than, and like here, she's leaving trails of like heat behind, you know. So the performance and everything kind of was tailored to more things that are seen in a non-human way, like in a thermal camera way, which is like maybe how a dog would see or a bat hears through sonar. So I'm more interested now in making video like not based on humans, traits. Yeah, actually not being human. So
have you been exploring new technologies or like new materials?
Yeah. I think with this drone, I was really interested in how it shoots 2 cameras at once. It shoots a regular camera and this thermal. So yeah.
So you have the regular footage.
Yeah, even right here, there's a moment I think that comes up
Oh yeah, I think I remember. Okay.
Okay, it'll come up in a second.
In the stairs.
Yeah, and in the
Yeah,
stairs.
okay.
And how that it's from the technology, but like, okay, how do we make a film now where you're watching regular footage
Mm-hmm.
and then perfectly cut to thermal footage.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on a story, a bigger film now called Kareen, based on regular footage or regular camera being the perspective of like a forensic documentary or like someone inspecting
okay.
a site,
Mm-hmm.
looking for clues like a
Mm-hmm.
detective.
Mm-hmm.
But then the thermal camera cuts perfectly, and we see in the thermal world things that are unseen. So there would be mythological creatures kind of hiding around this forensic site, you know, and that would be maybe the victim or the suspect or different things that escaped, but they're like jinn or they're Kareen. The Kareen is
how do you write it? Like
Qareen. Kareen.
It's like Karim.
Yes.
Okay.
But with an N.
Yeah, okay. Karin, okay.
And that like here's the regular footage, you know? Cut to the thermal footage. So you can see one moment it looks normal and then now we're able to see through this black shroud, you know?
Nice.
But how does a story look when you have those two types of footage, and how do you make a story or like a narrative off that, you know, being able to see in two different. So the idea is to have this mythological world inside this regular kind of documentary forensic world.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, and one starts to invade the other. The myth invades the reality, you know.
So it's something you're currently working on.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So it's based on this technology, you could say. It's like, how does technology also affect something like the classic film narrative? You know?
But so your experience with video and film really informs your current practice. Like it's kind of like an advantage because you have that like knowledge of like, you know, the medium that like most people would know just on the surface. So is it something like, are you currently interested in a new type of camera or material or anything like that?
I think I'm really interested in this drone, like shooting with a drone that has a thermal camera. I know I described it. But I think using it was so amazing because we could film through hallways of a school on a little drone. And so it was really remarkable how it moved. You didn't have the dollies or anything. You know, I come from a more traditional kind of cinematic background in filmmaking. So we would have dollies and cranes and all, you know, big cameras and lighting and all that. This took everything away. There's no lighting. It's thermal. There's no cranes. There's no dollies. It's all flying on its own very precisely through these hallways. So yeah, I could talk like, I think for me, technology like that, not so much in equipment, but changing the way of thinking, changing your methods. Because I think that is maybe changing my thinking is what technology does. In sculpture and other things, I've been really interested in like 3D resin, bonded sand. How they are making a lot of things out of bonded sand, like resin and sand, and I've been making sculpture out of that. So you can kind of notice like I'm sometimes in between traditional material or filmmaking. Like sand is very traditional, sandstone. Filmmaking, cinematic it's 100 years old plus. But then how it can be contemporary, like what is changing it. So like 3D printing with sand is now becoming a very big industrial technique. Shooting something cinematic off a thermal drone, doing the kind of the standard script structure or narrative structure, but with a camera that's more like a bat, you know, like it's reading with regular and thermal, you know, how does that change the story? So I'm really interested in how traditional things, the idea of the jinn, which is 1,000 years old, how that translates into science fiction films, how that form, like Alien movie, Predator movie, Terminator movie, essentially is a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
So how those traditions translate into contemporary or like now, you know, more modern.
Speaking of which, like you have this alien chair that we'll see at the end of this slide show.
These are some stills from Smokeless Fire.
So yeah, this was in Japan.
Yeah, this was installed. We made these pools of black water and then installed the projection screens right in the ponds so they reflect. This was shot inside the high school in Yonkers, so you could see like
yeah, so this was like your latest solo show, which was amazing. Congrats again.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
At the management. And this is the jinn, the representation of the jinn, right?
Yeah, like this is more like in film, in videos, like Alien movie, right? There's a whole series of them. There's these famous scenes of the alien in the AC duct going through the ship.
Yeah.
The AC duct is like this in-between space, this liminal space that connects
the worlds.
Yeah.
The worlds.
So it's, again, non-human. It's like how an animal would run through everyone's yard. It doesn't know that it's all different yards.
Yeah.
But the jinn, the shapeshifter, now is that idea of that myth continues, you know? We still need it, but now it's the alien in the ship that invokes fear or like this otherness, right? So I wanted to do that, and this was this sculpture. We made this, I made this AC duct, designed it, and then these chrome sculptures, like from RAF.
Oh, wow.
Making these chrome forms and cut this AC duct, and it's inside there. So it's the jinn more like very now, you know?
Yeah, like
through science fiction.
Science fiction, yeah.
Yeah, which is very important.
This is so... Yeah. I don't know why I just made this is so fascinating because it's true, like in science fiction we're always so obsessed with the aliens, you know, the concept of the alien, but it's actually this 1,000-year-old concept of the jinn.
Exactly.
But we don't, you know, like I think more people should talk about this. It's insane.
Yeah, that's so from doing RAF, I started to be like, oh, Frankenstein, vampire, werewolf is literally a shapeshifter. It's the human turning into kind of half human, half wolf. There's a reason why they all exist, and they're in every tradition, every culture. And in the past, it would have been like the next, some of these elements in this rug, in this, this is actually sand sculptures. But like in here, there's these characters I made, but many of them are hybrids, you know? They're like the middle character, this sort of totem, is a hybrid of like a horse or like an animal, a human. And that's very traditional idea, or like this hybrid sort of elongated shape is now kind of like the shape that was in the AC duct, you know? So yeah, I just really am interested in how like we're telling or retelling or continuing these traditions, you know, without maybe always being cognizant of it.
Yeah.
But it's very tied, for me now, is like tied to the human, the anima or the spirit, and then the machina, the machine. Now now machine is like part of our science fiction and the telling of the jinn and the shapeshifter, and you know. So
this show was the village beats itself. So can you briefly talk about it. So, yeah, like for instance, this sculpture, this one, is has some of the shirts in rough, right? Like the plaid, like the
has a
fabric.
little bit. It's one of those eggs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But actually, it's made out of satin.
Of satin. Oh, yeah. Nice.
So this show is a management. It's called Village Bites Itself. A Village Bites Itself, or the village. Yeah. Village Bites Itself. So it's a series of sculptures and rug sculptures. And this one is satin, and then the one next to it, which is plaid.
Yeah.
That's obviously that was kind of one of the first works I made for this show. Yeah, this.
Oh wow.
So it kind of came off these elements from Raft, but actually the show is more dealing with this the djinn, but the shapeshifter and how it continues in traditions. Talks about a lot of the works talk about that type of tradition, also a family, or like one of the other rug works is called Family Tree, the big blue one. So it was kind of showing some element. Yeah, this one is called Family Tree. It was a kind of very simple family tree, like the father, the mother, this hybrid totem in the middle, but which brings in this sort of like other element or shapeshifter element, and then it branches off into these sort of two children, you could say, or and one is a bit more looks militaristic or machine-like on the left, and the other one is a mix of human and animal. So it's using a lot of, and these are all characters I made out of the elements of this rug. Their pieces of them are all scattered. So and these rugs are made by merging the blue carpeting with this sort of tribal rug from Pakistan. So I'm making new characters out of kind of existing older elements, traditional elements, to kind of tell newer stories about now from traditional elements, older elements. Yeah. So so then
this one is like I think it's I would love to know more about this.
So this, you said something earlier about film being this advantage, know? And I spent quite a few years doing film, so I don't know how much of an advantage, because, you spend a lot of time learning film. But it does inform my sculpture a lot. Not even just video making, but also sculpture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I think of a show, each work, I could, like that management show or the Queen's show, I could go from work to work and kind of tell a story. So they're all like points or chapters, And then a lot of them are characters, like the piece before this in the plaid. This is a father kind of character, and the satin one was a bit more of a mother, character. So this is, and then here, I was something in my life where I was dealing with some evil person, right? And so this piece is called Squatter Psyche, So it's actually someone who was kind of, there's this term called taking up
your space, your mental space.
He's living in my mind rent free.
Yeah, rent free. Yeah. So it's like a parasite.
Yeah, it's a parasite.
Whoa.
It's taking this elongated form again, from the djinn, but all done. I made this all out of puffer jacket.
Whoa.
So it's like a North Face material, like North Face jacket, parka, made into this. It's actually, when it's uncurled, stretched out, it's like 21 feet long.
Whoa.
And I wrapped it around this Wasley chair, which is like a very...
Oh, that's what we were wondering.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a mid-century modern, very New York vibe.
Yeah, where did you find it?
It's a replica,
Oh, nice.
but I took all, it has all, it's, it's made out of all these straps,
Yeah,
like almost like
similar
this.
to this
Yes.
one, yeah.
I took all the straps and it's
Whoa.
just a chrome kind of skeleton, really.
Mm-hmm.
But what replaces that is this squatter or this character who's living rent free.
Wow.
And it has other elements. It's very New York. It's kind of the most New York sculpture I've done in a way, because it's like streetwear. It's like this high-end New York lifestyle, architecture and design.
Yeah.
Which we all aspire to. Like, I love these chairs.
Yeah.
But I also like that it's skeletal and chrome, and it's very much in my language. You know? But then, everyone wears parkas, but like, it's almost the idea of putting a jacket on a chair, and that you're saving that chair. That's your chair.
That's your chair.
Your spot.
Yeah.
But doing it in a much more maybe aggressive or much more like mythological way. Like the next, you can see a better shot here. It's like, it's like a serpent.
So do you have it in New York right now, or?
Yeah, it's actually in my studio.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So in your studio, you have all of your artworks.
Not all of them, but some, a few, yeah.
So, I had more questions, but maybe we're like, we don't have much time. But
okay.
I'm kind of interested in, like in your bio, you were talking about that, like you started meditating when you were 26. Are you still meditating?
Yes, every day. For the last dozen years, it's been like every day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So is it something, like how would you describe your routine? Like now that you're doing art full time, like what's your routine? Like,
so at 26, I was directing videos. I'd wake up and I'd actually meditate and be in a post-dream, post-sleep state. And that's where I'd come up with ideas, actually. That was the start. And I was going to Buddhist meditation, studying transcendental meditation. So now, about, like I said, in my early 30s, I started doing it. I went through this phase where I felt like I was losing a lot of myself to working for other people. And one of the things I did was start meditating every day. So in the beginning, it was 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes. But and now it's 20 minutes in the morning. I wake up, I do about 20 minutes of like kind of free yoga movement to get movement going. And then I meditate for 20 minutes. And the type of meditation is tied to transcendental meditation. But those things I do in the morning, activate the body. And then with meditation, I'm channeling through the body towards the third eye, or like the frontal lobe here. And I would say it kind of really changed my relationship to art and myself and my whole life. I was much more, had a temper and anger. And in the last dozen years of meditation.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Whoa, really? So you saw the difference?
Yes. Yeah.
Like so when you're upset, you're less angry, or?
Yes, I still have anger, but it's not immediately what I go to.
Yeah.
Whereas before maybe it would have been, and it's using breathing, which is in yogic practice, but also in meditation practice. It's this activation of, in scientific terms, your prefrontal cortex or your frontal lobe here, which is your kind of creative center. So what it also has done, which you don't know a lot, but it's made my intuition much stronger.
Wow.
So it's with art making and all that, and being on, filmmaking and all that, your decisions are not even immediate, like faster, but also really confident about it. My intuition and my indecision. My intuition has gotten much stronger, and the indecision has become much less. And I recommend meditation to everyone, and as well as creativity. And so now I've guided meditations where I have some of my own methods using humming and vibrational sound. Not a mantra, but you actually hum. So you feel the vibration in your chest, in your skeleton, in your skeletal bones, and that sort of vibration is, I think, really, it's bodily. It's much more connecting the body to the mind through meditation. Yeah. Not just meditation, but also body and mind, sort of channeling.
Yeah, I need to get into that. Yeah. Thank you so much. But before we leave, can you, what's next for you? What do you have? Any upcoming projects?
Yeah, there's things I'm working out, like possible, we'll see, solo shows, some group shows. Right now, though, so, things are not set yet, but there's some, I want to travel and work. I'm exploring certain residencies, or where I'm like maybe working with people in industrial settings, or like with communities. And then obviously like showing work. But more right now, there's this Korean project, film. I'm developing, as well as like these sculpture painting using sand or resin. That was from the management show. I started doing that. So sandworks, really exploring sand as a material and for installation. Yeah. So
nice.
Teaching.
You're teaching right now.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah.
How has it been?
It's good. It's very good. I'm at SVA working with some MFA students, and at Columbia working with MFA students.
Oh, nice.
I like it because it's more mostly studio visits and reacting to what they're making in their practice and things. And yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Asif, for being my guest today. Any last word?
I think I said a lot. But thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, that was a pleasure. And I'll make sure to add all the links. Make sure to check out Asif's website and Instagram. And you can find us at putf.substack.com. Thank you so much. Bye.